Hey everybody, it's Ryan Metzler here again. Today we're going to take a look at a two-player game from designer Uwe Rosenberg, who is of course the designer of Agricola, Caverna, At the Gates of Loyang, Le Havre, a lot of different games. This one we're going to take a look at is Fields of Arle. As I said, this is a two-player kind of exclusive game. Obviously it only plays two, but it's a very heavy two-player game, not like a lot of other two players out there. So this one is going to see players running a farm and delivering goods from one location to another, and throughout the game trying to, of course, earn points in order to win the game. So real quick, we'll take a look at what you're going to get inside of this box, and it's quite a bit. We'll see how the game plays, and then we'll come back at the end and get my opinions on Fields of Arle. So here you can see the components of Fields of Arle. What we're looking at here is the main player, or the main board, a player board or player boards for one player here, and then a central resource board here, and a bunch of different resources, from cows and horses and sheep to various textile goods. Each player here is going to be controlling their own farm, and they're going to be building things out on this farm board, and eventually throughout the game they're going to want to free up more space by moving the dikes back on their board. On this board, you can also see that they have resources. So right now, 5 food, 4 wool, some flax, and so forth and so on, that they'll be spending and gaining throughout the game in order to do various things. You'll also see that they have some peat bogs over here that they can flip over and drain to get more peat and eventually clear out to have more space, as well as some different farming crops and other things that they have on their board to start. Now, there's far too much to cover in this game to go over everything, so let's talk about the main mechanism of the game, and you can extrapolate from there. On this player board, or this main board over here, each player has 4 workers, and the game will be played over a series of 9 seasons. 5 of those seasons will be summer, and 4 of them will be winter, and then the game will end after the last summer phase. In the summer phase, you're only going to be allowed to play actions that are on the left-hand side of this board. So you'll see there's a left-hand side here with grass underneath it. And in the winter, you'll only be able to play actions on the right-hand side of the board that kind of has the snow underneath it. This is true in all cases except for one, and once per round, one of the players can cross over and play an action in the other season. But they will give up the first player token, and the first player will transfer at the end of that round. If you do not take this, it rotates automatically, so you can choose to be the second player repeatedly if you want to take an action from the other season that's not currently active. These actions are going to be many and varied. They could be giving you more resources. For example, if you place on a fisherman, it will get you 1 sheep, which you can place out onto your board in any empty space, or if you have stables or stalls and things, you can store them there. But will also let you increase some of your tools. Tools will make actions better throughout the game and can give you victory points at the end. So this increases my fish traps by 1, and then gives me a food for every fish trap I have. So I could get, for example, 3 food, which could also be worth points at the end of the game. Actions like the grocer will just give you choices of which resources you'd like to take. Or some actions like the wool weaver will let you convert wool that you already have into cotton. So you'll be able, not cotton, but into fabric, I should say. Wool doesn't become cotton, it becomes fabric. And then you can use this fabric later to make clothing. So you would lose your resources here and turn them in for fabric. Other spaces may allow you to flip over tiles on your board. For example, playing on the colonist in the summer phase lets you flip over one of your peat bogs, essentially draining it and making the peat accessible. So now you would have peat out on this peat bog, and you would want to clear that peat in order to use it to make something later. And so a space like the peat cutter allows you to cut 1 peat from your board per spade that you have, and that's another one of the tools out here on the board. Some of them will allow you to move these dikes. For example, increasing a dike from one position to another, which will free up more spaces on your board, as any spaces that are completely blocked off by a line of dikes cannot be built in. This one also happens to give you an animal for your farm, which will be worth points at the end of the game. Some of them will allow you to plow fields, placing new tiles out onto your board, so you may get to place a flax or a wheat field out onto your board, which will provide you resources at the end of the round. And then there are various other things. So some of them could be increasing or cutting wood. Some of them could be going ahead and increasing your tools if you decide to pay for them. So you can increase these tools to make your actions better, giving you more resources or more choices on your turn when you take those various actions. Finally, there are things like building. As you can see out on this board, there are a variety of different buildings that you can build on your turn for a given number of resources. It could be 1 of any resource and a grain, or it could be a lumber and a clay. Whatever it is, you pay those resources, return them to the supply, and you can build these buildings out onto your farm in an empty space. So you're going to be trying to build these buildings and place them out, which may give you some type of benefit in the game. For example, it could give you a new action that you could use, or a new benefit. For example, turning in a grain and a peat that you've acquired for 3 food. Also worth a victory point at the end of the game. Or it could be trading in 3 flax in order to get some cloth and 1 cutting of peat from your board. Also victory points. Some of these will give you instantaneous actions. For example, when you get this building, it gives you 1 cutting of peat as soon as you get this building. So you build it out and it gives you an action 1 time. And others could even be endgame victory points. So if you look down at the bottom here, there are some that give you an instantaneous reward. They cost quite a bit, but they're worth a lot of victory points at the end. These ones are all worth 15, whereas these ones are worth less, but can give you various bonuses based on how many of something you might have. So there's a lot of variety here. You can put out forests, you can buy carts, and buying carts is going to be a major play in this game. So not only are you operating this farm, trying to get horses and cows and sheep and wood and clay and bricks and all types of different resources, but you're also going to be trying to ship those resources off to market to various towns, which are represented by these tiles over here on this little board. So throughout a round, you're going to alternate placing your workers, first the first player, then the second player, until each player has placed all 4 of their workers, be they accumulating goods or increasing their tools or placing new buildings or flipping over tiles and cutting peat. All of these different options are available. But sometime in the rounds, you're going to want to acquire a vehicle because shipping things in this game is very, very important, and you're going to be sending them off to the cities. So for example, this is a cart here. This cart requires 5 wood and 1 horse and can hold 3 goods. This could be a large good and a small good. It could be 3 small goods, whatever it might be. But it can hold a certain number of goods, 3 spaces worth in this case. Some of them may cost more. For example, this one here has a 2-side space and a 1-side space, so it can hold a small and a large good, but not 3 small goods. And the other sides of these have bigger and better carts. For example, this one costs 6 wood and 2 horses, worth 5 points, but it can hold 2 small and a large good. So what you're trying to do is buy these carts, and you'll place them in your storage area over here, which will keep you from losing points and gain you points for the cart itself, in order to use these to ship things off. And at any point during your turn, you can load up these tiles or load resources onto your carts in order to convert them from one type of resource to another. So for example, we have this bolt of cloth here that if we load it onto our cart at the end of the round will turn into a shirt. Or for example, we have a basic resource here, which is one of these wood or lumber, I should say, can turn into a wood, or wood can turn into a lumber, I should say, or clay with a peat can be spent to turn it into a brick. So you're going to be improving your resources by putting them on your carts by the end of the round. Alternatively, you can deliver goods to a location, and I know that these may be hard to see, but these will give you food for delivering to them. This one is Norden, and it says that you can turn in a sheep at the end of the round for 4 food. You can turn in one of your boats, if you have one, a peat boat, for 5 food, and you may turn in some type of clothing for 7 food, and you can do all 3 of these if you like. If you have one of these shipping things, you can place this on here before the end of the round and turn in any of those things you'd like to gain that much food. In addition, if I had an extra space, I might put a wood on here in order to eventually, at the end of the round, convert it to a lumber, which is worth a half of a point, and is a different type of resource. Any of these that I finish and turn something in for will go out onto this travel track out here. And you'll see that this travel track has a list of victory points that increases throughout the game. The further you travel, the more points you'll get by the end. So you're going to want to try and accumulate vehicles, send goods out on those vehicles to get food, and of course, cover up this track here to gain as many victory points as you can by the end of the game. At the end of a round, after everybody's taken their 4 actions, loaded up whatever carts they might have with their goods, they'll first convert the goods that are on their track or place the travel markers out onto their road. After this, in summer, your animals are going to provide you with food based on how many you have. Your fields will provide you with goods, so each flax will provide you with a flax, and each grain will provide you with a grain, and your forests will provide you with wood. After that, you have to pay some food, and in the summer you pay 3 food, which can be substituted by grain or animals, and you owe 2 peat at the end of each summer, which can be substituted for by wood. And if you don't have these, you will lose points or lose resources appropriately. Once you're done with that, all of the markers would move over to the next winter phase. And so you would now be placing your workers on the opposite side of the board. Of course, if nobody had taken the action to switch to place on the other side of the board during the round, this marker would pass to the next player. If they had taken the action, this would go to the player who did not get to switch over seasons. And of course, you would start by placing in the next season with different actions available. The actions a lot of times are similar on both sides, but there are specific actions only available on specific sides of the board. Once you're done with that season, it has a very similar end round kind of cleanup phase where you are allowed to again deliver your goods, but then your animals will reproduce. So if you have at least 2 animals of the same type in an area, they'll make a new animal. And then your sheep will provide you with wool. So you'll get wool, and then again you have to pay some resources at the end of the round, in this case just food, which can be supplemented by grain or animals. At the end of the game, there is a very, very specific way that you score points, and many things will provide you with points. So you'll look and you'll see, do I have clothing tiles and or building materials left over? And the points for those are printed right on them. You'll gain that many points. Your equipment in the barn, which could be various different types of transport, or it could be specific carts or boats that provide you with things, can provide you with victory points at the end of the game as printed on them, or if you have no equipment, you might lose points. The travel experience, so if you've traveled along this road, whatever the highest or lowest number that's not covered will give you points. You will get points for all of your tools that you've acquired throughout the game, and then you will also get points for the goods track. So if you've got goods on your board, those goods are worth remaining points. Finally, you're going to get any VP printed on your home board, so any of these tiles that are worth VP. You'll get points for your animals, and you'll get points for any supply bottlenecks that you weren't able to supply. So if you weren't able to feed your people, you might have lost points throughout the game. And whoever has the most points in this manner will be the winner of Fields of Arle. And there you have it. That is Fields of Arle, a 2-player game from Uwe Rosenberg and Z-Man Games. First things first, just look at the size of this box. A ton of stuff comes in this box. And as you saw in the playthrough, you use all of that stuff, but it's all very functional and very useful and has great feel to it and great placement out in the play area so that you can manage it. So I love that aspect of this game. The game is, for a 2-player game, very heavy. It is kind of a point salad, so if you're a Feld player, you're going to notice that much like a lot of Feld games, this one scores points for pretty much everything you do. It could just be for collecting goods, it could be for shipping things, it could be for having animals, whatever it might be, it's going to provide you with some points one way or the other. A lot of people may have problems with this because they don't like the fact that just anything you do is giving you points and you don't have to focus on anything in general. I tend to think that this is a nice aspect, is I can kind of freeform do what I would like to do, earn points for it, and maybe explore different strategies of what I might or might not be able to ignore in terms of scoring points. I do think that, for example, delivering goods on your carts is going to be very important in this game. I'm not sure how well you can do without delivering a lot of your goods and finishing up that little travel path that you have on the board, but it's something that I would like to try at some point to see if I can, in theory, ignore that and go for a lot of points in a different way. So a lot of variety in the game, of course, a lot of components, but they all fit together nicely and the game flows in a manner that I think is pretty easy to follow. So overall, I'd have to say in terms of 2-player games, this is one that I enjoy immensely, definitely one that's going to keep its place in my collection, and one that I would hope to get to the table more and more often as time goes on, as I do really enjoy those heavy games that give me a lot of choices and a lot of options in terms of what I can do. So if that sounds good to you, check it out. That's Fields of Arle from Z-Man Games.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at Dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.